Almost Thanksgiving, Thursday. How many of you planning to eat Thursday? Okay, that's good. So my wife and I are doing what probably many of you have done. We got to talking over the weekend, making plans, who's coming, what do we need to get, what do we need to do to get the house ready. And our plans or our talk kind of shifted to, there's some in the medical community talking about maybe extended families shouldn't get together. Maybe you shouldn't have large groups of people. And, I'd have just enough of a rebellious streak that kind of irks me a little bit. I start to get a little irritated at that. And we even disagree maybe a little bit on that. And we're talking about it. I've got just a smart enough mouth that gets me into trouble. How many of you married to somebody like that? Go ahead and raise your hand. We'll look at them. Okay, so that happens. Done. We're having a little bit of disagreement about what we do and what that looks like. And she made this comment, said something like, "Well, maybe we ought to not have a big get together with all the kids and grandkids." And I promise, all I said was, "We'll miss you." Apparently, I'm social distancing at Thanksgiving this year. I may be looking for a place to come over. She knows me well enough to know that I was joking, and after she hit me several times, and I think we're good. It's Thanksgiving, and it's the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and welcome back to our series we're calling Foolproof Financial Advice. Foolproof Financial Advice. What we've done is we're taking 2 proverbs each week and talking about what the wisest man on the face of the earth had to say about handling our money. And he's got lots of things to say about it. In fact, the Bible has lots of things to say about it. And it's not all about giving your money away. There's lots of things just about how to be wise with your money. Now, lots of people talk about how to get more money. And lots of people talk about how to keep from losing your money. But we're looking at it from the focus of what does the wisest person that ever walked the face of the earth have to say about how to handle our money wisely. Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." And so what we've been trying to do is avoid being the fool, especially with our money. And so this is foolproof financial advice. Solomon, the wisest man that ever walked the earth and ever will, and the richest man that ever walked the earth and ever will. 1 Kings 10:14 says that Solomon received 666 talents of gold yearly. I'm just curious. I'm, kind of a numbers person. I'm like, I wonder how much that is. This is the annual amount that he received in gifts and taxes from, the world. This is the leader of the world at that time. 666 talents is 25 tons in today's measurements for us. 25 tons in what, we measure in gold is ounces. That's 800,000 ounces of gold that he got every year. 25 tons, 800,000 ounces. How many of you would take that every year? How many of you take that in a lifetime? That's a lot. How much is it? Well, 800,000 ounces at $1,800 to $1,900 an ounce, the going rate. Here it is. Every year, 1.5 billion. 1.5 billion every year that Solomon received just in gold. That's besides what he received in silver, besides what he received in spices, what he got in work animals, what he got in timber, what he got in weapons. I mean, this guy, just in gold, 1.5 billion every year. Can you imagine? This guy knew a lot about money and how to handle it. Okay, so not only is he wise, he's rich, and he gives us some instruction with it. And here's some things that he knew about it even before the wisdom happened. He knew that God owned it all, that God created it, God has it, God owns it. We don't need to give money to God because God already owns everything. And if you and I have anything, if Solomon had anything, we understand that it's because God entrusts us with it. God allows us to be stewards of it. We're not taking any of it with us when we die. It stays here. We're done with it. While we're on earth, we're just stewards of what it is that we have. And so Solomon says, in light of that, let me give you some principles, some things that I've learned from my wisdom. Now, Solomon's speaking from his wisdom, but he's also speaking as an inspired writer of Scripture. God gave him his wisdom, and God gave specifically these words to be included in the Bible. And so he says things to us like, know the state of your flocks. We talked about that last week. Know the state of your flocks. It simply means know where your money goes. Know who you owe money to. Know where you're spending it. You need to know the state of your flock. Talked about what all that means last week. Solomon also said, the plans of the diligent lead to profit. You want to profit, you need to have plans to do that. Plans lead to profit, but haste leads, haste leads to what? Anybody remember what that is? The plans of the diligent lead to profit, but haste leads to poverty. That's what it is. So we want to make sure that we're planning. It means we need a spending plan for our money. We need a budget. We need something to say, here's the priorities. Again, we talked about that all last week. If you missed it, it's online. You can go back and see it. So we're going to look at 2 more proverbs this week. We'll talk about the principle, we'll share the proverb, and we'll spend a little time talking about it, okay? Principle number 1 is this: enjoy what you have. Enjoy what you have. Because it's possible that you would only think about what you don't have, right? We spend time doing that. If only I had, I wish I had. We do a lot of that. And so Solomon would tell us, make sure that you enjoy what you have right now. Here's the proverb from Proverbs 15:16. It says, better to have little with fear for the Lord than to have great treasure and enter turmoil. Better to have little with fear for the Lord than to have great treasure and enter turmoil. Enjoy what you have. It is better that you wouldn't have and enjoy life than to have a lot and not be happy. I mean, that's what Proverbs, Solomon's tells us. This is one of the better proverbs, better in the sense that it uses the word better and it has a contrast to it. Better this than that, and usually a reason why. There's all kinds of it. Some of them are really funny, like one of them literally says, better to live on the corner of a roof than with a nagging wife, right? Okay, we can laugh at that, but it's in there, and there's some little truth to that we all recognize. It's a better than kind of a thing, right? Better that we would not have anything but be happy than to have everything in the world but not really have the most important things. Better this than that. This proverb explains a universal problem, doesn't it? That we always look to what we don't have. We want more. We're not content with what we have, and we want more than what we have. And so Solomon says for us that wanting more, it is possible for you to find yourself in a position where you wanted more, and when you get more, you realize you're no better off than when you were before. That you've missed out on something by always wanting more. The principle is enjoy what you have. See, the desire that we have to want more is not new with us. Solomon's addressing it 3,000 years ago, so it's not new with our culture, not new with our generation. We're always looking for something. People have always looked for a, more, better house, a better job, bigger paycheck, another vehicle, the latest, the greatest, whatever. The problem is more never satisfied. In fact, have you ever thought about how much would be enough for you? You ever thought about how much money would it take for me to be happy? At what point of making money would I say, I'm no longer going to raise my standard of living, this is enough for me? At what point, if somebody was giving you money, would you say, I'm done, that's enough, don't give me any more? And no matter what the number you would include in that, no matter what your answer would be to that, all of us would have generally the same answer. It's more than I currently have, right? I'm going to want to have a salary that whatever level is more than I have. I want money that's more than I have. That's just the way that we think. We generally want more than we have. In fact, U.S. News and World Report did a survey back several years ago, and they asked people, how much money would it take for you to feel good? Here was the term that they used. How much money would it take for you to make, for you to fulfill the American dream? Whatever that is in their mind, what would it take? So they asked people that made $25,000 or a little under, how much money would you have to make? Generally, or on average, this is what they said. I would need $54,000 for me to be able to feel like I was, fulfilling the American dream. They asked people on the other end of the extreme, if you made $100,000 or more dollars, that category, how much would it take for you to make to fulfill the American dream? Their answer, on average, $192,000. Are you seeing the trend here? Basically, what they're saying is that everybody answered, I would roughly have to make 2 times of where I'm at for me to fulfill the American dream. No matter where they were, no matter what level of income, they were saying, I need twice as much for me to be able to be happy. You know the Greek word for greed? 2 words, actually. Have more. That's what greed means. It means have more. It's this insatiable desire and lust for more and more. It's the constant thinking of it, the scheming, the wondering, how can I acquire more? We know that greed used to be thought of as a sin, as a vice, something to be avoided. But more currently, greed is now something that is a little more acceptable to us. We don't use the same term for it. We talk about people having goals, being highly ambitious. Not called greed. We talk about it like appreciation for quality or having good taste. We use terms like that. But greed always holds out this unkeepable promise that it can somehow be satisfied. If you just had this, then you'll be fine. You won't ask for any more. You'll be happy. It'll stop. But it never satisfies. We always want more, but it never satisfies. One more check, one more, car, one more, jet ski, one more household furnishing, one more article of clothing. We just never get there. We never get to the point where we say no more. What makes it even worse is sociologists say there is a real condition now. They have labeled it FOMO, F-O-M-O. It's the fear of missing out. The fear of missing out. It's fueled by social media. So what happens is people get on Facebook or whatever, and they read what their family and friends, the new car that they just bought, or the really great vacation that they went on, and there's this anxiety then that begins to build up. And people think, well, they're getting things that I don't have. And they're going places that I've never been. And this fear of missing out then causes people to go to great lengths so that they can experience more. Listen to what Hebrews 13:5 says. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So keep your lives free from the love of money. Be content with what you have. And then the writer of Hebrews says, here's the secret to that. Because God has told you that he won't leave you. In other words, the key to being content, the key to not having your life tied up with how much you have, is to trust God, is to be dependent upon him, to say that he is going to take care of me. R.C. Sproul said, our problem isn't wanting things too much. It's not wanting him enough. See, greed says, I want more. But contentment that's based upon a trust in God says, I don't need more. I trust God. God's enough for me. I'm going to enjoy what I have. Listen to Philippians 4. Paul uses the same word about contentment there. He says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. Paul says, I've been on both ends of the extreme. I've had plenty. I've been destitute. And then he says this, I've learned the secret of being content in every situation. Whether I have a lot or whether I have a little, I've learned to enjoy where I'm at and to enjoy what I have. And so like Paul, we need to learn maybe a better word than secret would be the mystery of being content. It's not something that you can't find and it's being hidden from you. It's something that maybe is difficult for us to find and to experience. We need to learn the mystery of being content. It means enjoy what you have, whether it's a little, whether a lot. It means enjoying and being satisfied with where you are. Because if you're not content with a little, you're not going to be content with a lot. Just the way it works. Solomon's warning for us is that the constant pursuit of more, it will prevent you from experiencing the best in life. It'll prevent you from experiencing the most in life. Constantly wanting more will prevent you from experiencing what God wants for you. So enjoy what you have, Solomon says. Enjoy what you have. Here's the second principle we're going to look at today. Live beneath your means. Live beneath your means. It means don't spend all that you have. Don't spend everything. Spend less than you make. The proverb is Proverbs 13:7. Solomon says it this way: one man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. It's possible for somebody to look like they're rich, but they're really not. Anybody know somebody like that? They look like they're rich. They drive a car like they're rich. They live in a house like they're rich. They spend money. They go out to eat like they're rich. But you know just enough. Somebody let it slip at some point. They're really not there. They're borrowing money. They're spending somebody else's money. They're really not. In other words, things aren't always as they seem, as they appear to be. It looks that way, but in reality, it's something else. In fact, it reminds us a little bit of the old cliche. Remember keeping up with the Joneses? You know, that was kind of a deal. Keep up with the Joneses. In other words, I've got to, make myself look like and appear like and spend money like the people that live next to me or the people that I go to work with. We're keeping up with the Joneses. We got to get the next car. We got to move up to the next house. I'm keeping up with the Joneses. And it's like Solomon is saying, listen, don't be foolish and try to flaunt what you have. Don't be foolish and try to get the latest and greatest, because that's a sure path to the poorhouse. He's saying to us, live beneath your means. And that simply means creating some margin in your finances. Don't spend everything that you make. Now, here's some contributing factors to that. We live in a world that equates two terms as being like they're equal. One of those is, let's call it standard of living. Everybody understands what I mean by that. Standard of living is the level or the status of which we live. You know, you can live in a nice house, or, you can live in one that's less than the standard. You can live in one that's, way above the standard. And the car you drive and the things that you wear. There's a standard of living that we all live in. There's another term, let's call it quality of life. Quality of life is just enjoying life, right? It's just you like it. You're happy. You're enjoying something in life. What our culture has told us is that your standard of living determines your quality of life. Your standard of living defines your quality of life. Your standard of living is equal to your quality of life. It's a lie. It's not true. I know it because I've experienced people that their standard of living was right here. They're happy, they're loving life, their quality of life is here. I've seen it in other countries, I've seen it here. I know people whose standard of living is up here, and their quality of life way down here. They are not equal. Our culture keeps telling us, but there is a big difference. We've been sold a bill of goods that they're the same, and they're not. So you can improve your standard of living. We think that if we raise up, we improve, we upgrade our standard of living. We think if I do that, then I'll also enjoy quality of life. That's kind of the American way. But some of you have raised your standard of living, and you know it didn't improve your quality of life. You're not any happier. You may be less happy than you were before. You can raise your standard of living by making more money, by increasing your debt. You can jump up the ladder there. But really the only way that you increase your quality of life is when you put some margin into your finances. Is when you create something through some discipline, some margin. See, creating some margin in your finances, it may lower your standard of living, but it will greatly increase your quality of life. And so what's the problem is some of you are stuck. You've got here a higher standard of living, but you also got, debt and payments and things that you got to take care of, and there's no money, and so your standard of living is higher. You've made more money than you've ever made before, but you're not happy. A couple of myths help us get there, believing these myths. One of them is this: I need to adjust my lifestyle to keep up with my level of income. I need to adjust my lifestyle to keep up with my level of income. In fact, no matter what I make, then I spend that much, right? That, again, kind of the American way. I need to upgrade everything. And so when you were maybe first married or maybe first got a job, you bought a house. We call it a starter house because there's kind of the tendency that as I make more money, I need to get a bigger house. I need to get a better house. I need to, have more amenities to that house. And so we get another house, and I may even get another house down the road. As I make more money, I tend to buy a house that relates to how much I can have. In fact, that was the first question that the mortgage lender asked me when we were trying to get our first out. How much money do you make? And based upon that, you can afford this much house. Never asked me how much house I wanted. They just said, you can afford this much. And everybody's like, all right, I guess I'll get that house. I guess I'll spend that much money. So what happens is that our lifestyle tends to go up with our level. We allow our level of income to drive our spending. Here's myth number 2. If I had just a little more, I'd be happy. We've kind of been talking about that this morning. If I had just a little more, if I made just a little more, if I acquired just a little more, if I saved just a little more, whatever it is, if I had more, that would be enough. That would take care of me. Then I'd be happy. The problem is, you felt exactly the same way when you made a whole lot less, didn't you? You made less and you went, if I only had more. Now you're making more and you're thinking, if I only had a little more. If I just had more, then I'd be happy. You're better off probably now than you ever were before, and we know it's still not enough because there's this myth that if I just had more, I'll be happy, and it's not true. So let's draw just a little bit for kicks, okay, and just explain some of this and make it really simple. We've talked about this, but it's been a few years since we've done this. So we're going to do a line graph, okay? Line graph here, kind of like a lot of line graphs. This is time that's gone by. That's supposed to be a clock, not a pizza. And this is money right here, how much money I make. So this is generally true, okay? Generally true. This is my income line right here. Some of you are like, I wish my income was going up like that, okay? Whatever it is, it's going up, right, okay? Generally, over time, as you get older, your income goes up. I know during COVID, maybe it didn't go up. I know that if you're unemployed for a while, it stays flat or goes way down. So here we are. Our income, generally, it goes up. Well, you know what? So does our spending, doesn't it? Our spending goes up because of this thing called inflation. It costs a whole lot more. Milk costs more, gas costs more, everything costs a little more than it used to. And so our spending is going up. The ideal scenario is that our spending doesn't go up as much as our income does, right? Most of us started out where things were pretty tight. Maybe when you first got married, when you were first working and you had the kind of low-end job, and maybe you had kids and you were counting every penny and things were tight. But usually there can be a broadening of that gap right there, and what we call that right there is margin. It's this beautiful thing called margin, that I'm not spending everything that I have, everything that I make. And you know what? When you have margin in your finances, you sleep better, don't you? You get along with people better. You drive slower. You're more generous. When you've got some margin in your finances, just things are better. Life is better. And so that's the ideal right there. But the problem is that sometimes it can look more like this. Let's go ahead and let's put our, income level right there. There's income. But oftentimes in our world, it looks a little more like this, doesn't it, with our spending. Our spending tracks with our income. We've followed along with that idea that income drives our spending, and so we just keep spending. We just keep, if we got the money, we're going to spend it. We're going to allow our income to drive our spending, and they end up being at the same level. The problem is that if we ever have an emergency, if we have to make a new purchase, we're already in trouble because all of our money is already allotted to something else. And so it becomes an issue. In fact, at that level, you become kind of one paycheck away from a disaster. Now, all of us have spent some point in time right there. We know what that's like. We know it's uncomfortable. We hate it. Sometimes you have to do it for a short amount of time and hope nothing really goes south on you. But that's not the best place to be. The problem is there's a worse place even than that. Let's do this. Oh, somebody's writing me notes there. Look at that. We're going to do our income level here. It's possible in our world that spending can be right there, right? It's possible with credit cards and possible with loans that you can actually spend more than what you make. If you think it's a disaster spending as much as you make, it's possible to spend more. And not only is there not any margin, what we've got right here is actually a negative. We're losing out right there. And this is what Solomon said about that. He said in Proverbs that if you're in that place, that you're a slave to the lender. You have lost your freedom and you are slave to the lender. Keeps you from doing what you want. Keeps you from the dreams that you have. It keeps you from being generous. You worry about money. So the answer, according to Solomon, and one that gets so overlooked, is to spend less than you make. Have the wisdom to show restraint in spending, in what you buy. Use your money for what you need, not just what you think you need or what you want, but what you really need. Don't allow yourself to become a habitual spender and get in that place where you're never satisfied. Live beneath your means. And when you do that, it allows you to put some money back for the future. It allows you to save for emergencies. And it allows you to be generous to people in need. Solomon, the wisest, richest person that ever lived, gives us counsel on what to do with our money. But he does it not so that we can have more of it, not so that we can lose less of it. He does it, he says, because this is the wise thing to do with your money. When you do the wise thing, then as a follower of Jesus, you can be generous like he wants us to do. To people in need, to ministries, to missions, to places. That's a mark of a follower of Jesus, is sacrificial generosity. And then we're able to save and we're able to give. In fact, that's exactly what we're going to talk about next week when we wrap this foolproof financial advice up. Pray with me. Father, we thank you for teaching us through your servant Solomon. God, thank you for giving him financial wisdom God, it's clear that when we read everything about him that he lived that, and he showed that, and he shared that with us. And so, Father, would you help us to be people that learn to enjoy what we have and where we're at, to be content. And also, Father, to live beneath our means, to not have to be like everybody else, but to truly live with some margin in our finances. Father, would you help us to do that, to be followers of Jesus that show themselves trustworthy with what you've given us. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.